I haven't given this presentation before. I haven't taught on Atlas before, but I really like Atlas. I think I'm one of the few people who does. So I think that's why I'm here. And I've used Atlas on a number of projects now in the field. And I think we in public health do a lot of programmatic qualitative research, which you've heard Peter talk about, as opposed to true grounded theory, as opposed to other kinds of analysis. So in programmatic qualitative research, I think Atlas has a lot of utility. And I want to take you through one example that I used Atlas with, and then I want to go through some step-by-step instructions, some basic skills to give you, directions to give you, so that hopefully you have some confidence by the end of this that you can do it yourself. Yes?
Somebody who likes Atlas a lot, can you compare a little bit like Atlas and NVivo?
I can't do that. Okay. Sorry. I've never used NVivo, but all I can do today is show you. Let me show you what I can do and what I can't do. Yeah. Again, please, and please feel free to interrupt me anytime with questions. So these are the things I'm not doing today. I'm not going to teach you every trick and tool Atlas has. Atlas has a lot of different functions, a lot of really great functions. I will go through things that I think that you need to do the analysis for this class, and then also for in the field. I'm not going to kind of try to convince you that Atlas is the end-all be-all to analyze textual data. You can make that decision yourself. I'm going to talk about an approach that I used when I was in Ethiopia recently to analyze data. I'm not saying this is the correct way or even a recommended way. I kind of made it up myself based on my previous experiences and based on, of course, what I've learned at school. I will not be discussing the trial version. I don't really know much about the trial version. I've never had it. I recommend buying it for $99, although I'm not selling it. So my objectives today are to use a real-life example to illustrate how Atlas can be utilized and how it can be useful to you. I hear a lot, oh, Atlas is such a pain in the butt. It's too hard. There are too many things. There are too many icons. I just want to code with my green highlighter and my yellow highlighter and my pink highlighter, and then I'll have answers to my research questions. I actually think that's more difficult, and so I want to debunk the myth that Atlas is too difficult to use. And then I want to give you a little bit of confidence to use it. I guarantee after an hour you won't feel confident, so maybe I should change that objective to instill familiarity with you to be able to use it. So let me first go take 25 minutes to give you an example. And I think this example is perfect for you because it's perfect for what you might do over the summer. If you have an internship, it's probably what you'll do in this class as you have done in the previous 8 weeks and now these 8 weeks. I think it's the epitome of programmatic qualitative research. So let me briefly just give you some background so you understand where I'm coming from, and then you'll be able to see how it's probably an analog to what you have been doing. So I did a project here in Western Ethiopia, and I guess before we look at this, it was a community case management program. And it was a program employing or utilizing community health volunteers to go out to the rural parts of different communities to teach about pneumonia, diarrhea, and malaria. Not only to teach about them, but also to use preventative measures to prevent from those illnesses. Also, the community health volunteers worked to provide referrals to the local health clinics. And the project was a 3-year project. And my job was to come in and to analyze the qualitative data, talking to a number of different types of people in order to complement the quantitative data that had been collected. So, how did I do that? And this is probably very similar to what you have done in this class. I had to train my data collectors on many hours of theory methods and analysis. Then the only 2 methods that we used were IDIs and FGDs, but as a team, the local data collectors and myself, we developed our instruments together, and we translated them into Amharic and Rotanya. Rotanya is a local language, Amharic is the national language of Ethiopia. So there was a lot lost in translation because it had to go from Rotanya to Amharic to English. And if you can think about how to do a focus group, and so then to make matters worse, our interviewers in focus groups, they were only able to speak Amharic, so the Rotanya had to come back, and then the person had translated into Amharic back to the interviewer, to the moderator, And then the question would go back to the translator, and then the translator would ask the people. And then finally, when it got to me, it was in English. So you can imagine how much was lost in translation. So that was week 1. Week 2, we collected our data. We had 2 teams working in 3 Walredas. A Walreda is a district within Ethiopia. And we had different groups. So we had mothers, community health workers, community health volunteers, health extension workers who are similar to community health volunteers, but they're paid by the Ethiopian government. We had health officers and Kibeli chairpersons. Kibelis are villages at the village level. We only collected 6 FGDs and 20 in-depth interviews. So that's probably a similar data set to what you're working with in this class. And that's just and we did some peer debriefing to help with our validation. During week 2, because analysis should be an iterative process and should be ongoing, we started to analyze just in week 2 of data collection. Week 3, we hired a translator to translate all the Amharic into English. So now I had these English versions, and I had to do more formal analysis. So this was only 3 weeks. All of this was done in 3 weeks, and that's the reality of public health, for better or for worse. These were the research questions. I only show them because I want you to start thinking about how would you analyze if these were the research questions that you were given. I was given these research questions, which is commonplace in public health because donors want to know certain things. Organizations want to know certain things. So what kind of impact did the program have on child health from the perspectives of the 5 stakeholders? What experiences did mothers have with medications? So what's a big difference between research question 1 and research question 2 for analysis purposes? Well, we're asking from the perspectives of the stakeholders, so this would be qualitative. I'm sorry, what? Yes, and so not only in data collection, but also in data analysis, and that's what I'm getting at. Here, this is a pretty easy question to answer using ATLAS or using a highlighter. I just look at all the mother's responses related to medications, and voila, there's my answer. Now, this question is a lot harder because now I have different groups of people. So if you think about all these different transcripts laying around, now I have to stratify by all these different people using different color highlighters or track changes or whatever else you might do by hand, and then I have to come up with some kind of result. That's pretty challenging, I think. But I think in the field, that's the reality that we have different types of groups of people. We have different stakeholders, so we need to stratify textual data as well. ATLAS does this well. We'll come back to these research questions later, but I just want to show you that the questions should drive your analysis. And then we had 8 questions altogether. So here are the data that we collected. As you can tell, we probably didn't reach data saturation because the sample sizes were relatively small compared to what you've learned are appropriate recommendations in QRTM. But we have the 20 IDIs and 6 focus groups. To be honest, I had to push to get these numbers. They wanted to talk to 1 person maybe in each group and do 1 FGD here or there. I had to really try to get them to get a little bit more. So how did I do this analysis? I took some ideas from grounded theory, which you've learned about. Right? I let the data talk to me. I tried to develop answers to new questions which I hadn't thought about. But I also used more of a content analysis approach, which is more deductive, because I was given these research questions. I had to answer them a certain way. So I had to go into the data. I had to look for these answers. And so I did a combination of both, which probably is what you'll do in this class too, although I know maybe there's more emphasis on grounded theory. In the field, you'll definitely probably have to do this. Definitely, probably. So, how did I do this? What were my steps? And I think these steps might be helpful to you just to look at and see, because I remember doing this 2 years ago in this class thinking, I don't even really know where to start. So we produced this transcripts and we read through them as a group, and I think you might be doing that right now. Next, I identified potential analytic categories. Some of those categories have already been identified by the donors, but in this case, I came up with new categories also, which I identified, and that's the grounded theory portion of what I'm discussing. Then I developed my initial code book. I had 34 codes to start. That code book then was expanded just a little bit as I worked through the data more closely. I then coded the data using Atlas. I looked for themes. I looked for answers to the research questions, though. Then, using Atlas, I was able to use the query tool to extract data, specifically stratifying for those different groups of people. Very, very useful. And then I was able to compare and contrast themes, and then I built data matrices. I actually don't know how to build data matrices in Atlas yet that well. I can do it, but it doesn't say a lot to me, so I use Microsoft Word. So, sorry, that's not the animation I was hoping for, but the red indicates which section we're on right now. So in this project, I produced transcripts. I identified analytic categories. I like to do this either just reading on my computer through the Word documents. I like to maybe sometimes print them out and read through them depending on my data set. This is not at Atlas yet. You've probably already begun to do this. Sorry. Next, I developed my codebook, which I think you've done already, correct? No, you're doing that. So your codebook will probably look something like this. This is a portion of my codebook from codes 9 through 13. These are the names of my codes. For example, role change of mother. I was looking for how mothers perceive the role change from CHVs providing service and treatment to the health extension workers providing service and treatment. And then I looked at that between mothers, between CHVs, between Kibeli chairpersons, between health center staff, and then health extension workers. And this is something that your codebook would look like. I think my codebook should have an example there also, but it doesn't. I actually like to print out my codebook and have it in front of me and have each page ready to go, and I'm able to look at it, and then I'm able to build my codebook on Atlas. You can also do it within Atlas, but to start, I like to print it out so I can see it and I can get familiar with my codebook. So next, this is the part that you're most interested in, and that's why I'm kind of rushing through this. But using Atlas to code. So I have my code, my basic code book, which the donors have said, Steve, you need to answer these research questions. I've read through the transcripts. I know some themes I want to look for also. So now I've built my code book with the understanding that I'm going to build upon it more, probably. It's sitting in front of me, and now I've opened Atlas. This is just a screenshot of Atlas. This is, we'll go into it in more detail, but this is just to show you. This is a transcript. Here are all the different codes that I was applying to the different pieces of text. This is a list of all my memos. I know Peter loves memoing, talks about it a lot, and I find it quite helpful too. And this is my codebook now, my Atlas codebook. The previous codebook I showed you was in Microsoft Word. I built it in a table first. So let's go to the Ethiopia hermeneutic unit. Okay, so we're going to go through this very slowly together as in the latter half of the lab. But to start, I just want to show you my data. I want to show you what are some different things that I did in here. So I've got my codes, and I know Steve Harvey talked about this a little bit, but here are all my primary docs, and they're all in Word documents. You can also upload PDFs. I'm working on a World Bank analysis right now, and it's all PDF documents. But Word documents are fine as well. In fact, Atlas is very cool in that it searches. It can search in PDFs, or it can search in Word documents too. And then, of course, there are many other types of things that you can upload. I'm not familiar with most of them. So here's one document you can take a look at, P8. Here are my codes. This is my code manager. Can you see my mouse? Yeah. This is my code manager, and this is my memo manager. I like to work with these open, so just clicking on them each to work with them open so I can see everything on my screen. My code manager, how does it look to be alphabetized? Okay, it's alphabetized, so it goes in ABC. It goes in ABC order. That's very useful though if you think about your codes and your subcodes when you're creating your code book. And here are my memos. So let's just take a look at a memo. This one. So I double-clicked my memo, it tells me automatically what quotations or what pieces of text I memoed. So with 26 documents, I don't remember where I memoed or what I wrote down, but this automatically takes me to that. So this memo is something that I was thinking of as I was coding, and I probably would have forgotten 10 minutes later, or I would have forgotten that night. I don't know. A major theme that seems to be emerging is the combination of traditional practices and care-seeking behavior in the biomedical paradigm. Mothers are offering different perspectives regarding this, and the discrepancy might be emerging more in focus groups where mothers are saying normative behaviors that they perceive and other mothers would be okay with. More IDI data will elucidate this. So I was starting to think of things that I would put in my final report, things that I might forget later. But memoing is quite helpful. But within Atlas, I can connect it directly to those pieces of information that it was related to. Yeah?
But you have to click on each memo to find out where it was in there, or is that also along the side? Like, does it show you in your text documents?
Yeah, so that's my memo manager. It's also in here also, somewhere. So this primary doc doesn't look to have any memos. Let's find one that does. I was memoing a lot more near the end, I think. Maybe I'm lying about that. What?
Yeah, like I'm sure it's there. Yeah.
Oh, here's one. So here's one memo, and it's attached. It's attached to something here. I'm not exactly sure what it's attached to, but it's attached to this code, and well, this code's here. So it's attached to this whole piece of text. And now I can click on it, and it's actually attached to the whole entire thing, and then I could read the memo as well. Okay, we'll come back to this, but I just wanted to show you my coding. I wanted to show you I was able to take memos. I wanted to show you, what else did I want to show you initially? If I double click this code, educate, or let's go to a more specific one. Educate CHVs about diarrhea. So it's how CHVs were educating about diarrhea. And by double clicking on it, it automatically takes me to all of the codes within the 26 documents where I coded. How awesome is that? If you want to do that with 26 transcripts in front of you, be my guest. But that was way easier.
So then can you open that to look at all the different segments, or how do you like come
So,
to a conclusion?
Good question. So let's say I want to look at one quotation. I can double click it, and it'll take me to that primary document like it just did at the bottom and highlight it. Right? Now, the question is, Steve, okay, now what do you do with that? Let's go to that next.
Steve?
Yes?
Memos says when you have the memos, I noticed you have a link to parts of text. You can link them across different transcripts, right?
Yes, so I can link memos, and we'll do that together in the lab. Okay? Yeah, right now I just want to give you an overview and try to show my love for Atlas a little bit, because I think it gets a bad rap. Okay, so that's just a picture of the HU. There are some very simple things I could do. So now the question is, okay, Steve, you've coded all this data. You have it. I missed something. Actually, let me show you one more thing which I think is quite useful. Sorry. So I've coded my data, I've written memos about my data, but now what's something that you're thinking of that I need to do or might be useful to do using this software based on my research questions? Group the data by code. Yes, I could do that. What else could I do? Think about that first research question. How would I answer that? Do I want to how do I want to do that?
Stratify by different people you're talking to.
Stratify by different people I'm talking to. I think that's an important thing to do. And Atlas is quite useful in doing so. So right now, If we go to documents, and again, this isn't meant to be step by step yet, but if I go to documents and I edit families, now I have a family manager. The family is synonymous with the group, so the group of people. If I open my family manager, or if I assign families, then I can assign groups of people. And in this project, you can see I did that. So I have 3 of my primary documents are Cabelli chairpersons, 7 of my documents are community health volunteers, 6, 3, and 7, blah, 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 blah. Very useful. When I come to answer my research questions, I can search specifically based within this group, or within this group. So if I want to look at the ICC, the Community Case Management Program impact by mothers, I can actually just look within these 7 documents. Imagine doing that by hand. Annoying. And time consuming too. We'll talk about how to assign families soon. Okay. Doesn't it seem very cool? Yeah. Okay, so back to my crummy animation though. Okay, so now the important part. So I've coded, I have created my families. What else have I done? I've written memos. I've got probably these answers in my head. I've gotten them in my memos. I'm ready to take this next step. And I think the next step is this bridge that oftentimes is missing in qualitative data analysis, is how to get from all these codes, all these memos, to maybe answers to questions, or to writing a report, or to producing a paper. So again, we've talked about this. But let's look at a tougher one maybe. Well, maybe they're not that tough, but if you look at number 7, so number 7, what would I look for in my data to answer this question? Sorry, number 7. I've coded it, I've written memos, I've made quotes based on some exemplar quotes, but how would I answer this? So stakeholders represents all 5 groups, but a family of CHVs, probably I'd want, and probably I'd want to look at this family of HEWs, right? And stakeholders represents all 5 groups actually. So I want to look at how does the stakeholder group 1, how do they look at this quality of service? And how do they look, and how does each of the 5 groups look at this quality of service? So my searching becomes a little bit more complex at that point. But I can do it. I can do it. Oh, let's go to the query tool and extract data to answer our research questions. This should be fun. So, I don't know, what's something we want to find out? Well, let's pick a group. I'll pick mothers. So if we go to tools, I have my query tool right here. And there are a lot of other things here too. To be honest, I probably know about half of what they do. But here's my query tool. On the left-hand side are all my codes. That's my code book, basically. So very simply, let's make it smaller. So very simply, if I look at this, Educate CHV, there are 32 codes that are associated with Educate CHV. These were messages given by community health volunteers. So every time I saw a message given by a community health volunteer, I would code it. That happened 32 times across 26 different documents. And the second number represents the number of links to other codes. As you can tell, I don't have a great linking capacity yet, but I'm working on that. But you guys wanted to know, Steve, well, you have all these codes about educating CHVs, but we want to stratify, right? Let's look at different groups. Okay, so how do we look at different groups? Very easily. If we go down to the bottom right corner, we have scope. And for once, that actually makes sense as an ATLAS command. Most ATLAS commands are questionable. So how do we want to define this? Let's look at all the times Actually, let's pick a different code because these might all be by CHVs, in fact. Let's pick ICC impact care-seeking behavior. How about that? That's a good one. Because this could be anyone could have said this. What's the impact of the program on care-seeking behavior? If I double-click it, now on the bottom right, I have all of these different, all 42 different codes and their related part in text. If I were to double-click one right now, a mother, blah, 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 it would go to that primary document. But as we mentioned, we want to narrow our scope. So let's narrow scope to see how mothers think about care-seeking behavior in particular. Double-click. And below here is all the mothers' comments total. So you can see mothers talked about illnesses, mothers talked about healthcare behavior, mothers and diarrhea. But now I just specifically looked at care-seeking behavior among mothers, and I've come down to this number of quotes. Does that look like 42 quotes? No, it's not, because it's just the subset of mothers. Now, we have all of the mothers' comments about care-seeking behavior, and let's not print it, but you have to push the print icon for some reason. And we'll open this. And we'll say OK to editor. Now look at this. This is beautiful. This is my favorite part of Atlas currently. So if I look at what just happened, all by mother, all of the codes, so 23 quotations, not 46, came out about the impact of the program on care-seeking behavior. This is from primary document number 1. This tells me exactly the mother was from Hamosha Shirkale, which is a specific area. It tells me, well, this is my file name, actually. So my file name is helpful here. And it gives me the exact part that I coded. So if you think about answering questions, what I do then is I have this printout now of all the mothers' comments about care-seeking behavior. And it maybe covers 2 pages. I actually like to print them out myself. So I will print this out. I would print out one about health extension workers. I would print out one about health officers. And then I will put them in front of me. And now I have this group, and I have this group, and I have this group. And I'm dealing with 6 pieces of paper rather than 26 documents total. And I'm able to then answer that research question very specifically based on this very specific output from the query that only Atlas can do, and maybe in Vivo. Yes?
Does the term super mean?
Super refers to me. I go for the most egotistical names I can think of for myself. Yeah, so I think, so actually that's a good question though, because when he passes it when you guys pass it from group member to group member, you can assign the author. And I didn't assign any author. The super just means superintendent or the master person of this file. So that shows that Steve coded this as this, or whoever owns this computer coded this as this. When you pass it to each other, then when you're coding, you can identify as a different name. So then maybe when we're working as a group, I could see who coded what.
Can you talk about passing stuff within a research group, like how you would?
Yes, we'll do that last.
I missed how you narrowed the scope. Could you just show us the icon one more time?
Sure, we'll do it more. We'll do it together in lab. I just want to show you the example first that is capable of doing this. So, and actually, so take a look. If I can find, based on my orderly desktop here, data. So these are actually those output files that I just produced, and I saved them. So these are the answers to research question number 1. And I still have those raw data if I need to send them to the donor or to someone else. These are my answers to question 2. Remember that only dealt with one stakeholder, so it only required one simple search, and it was actually only 13 quotations. That was a very short document that answered our question. Probably didn't reach data saturation. And then I have all these documents. They're very nice. They're very orderly. I produced this final report, and the woman, she emailed me multiple times and said, Steve, that's great, but I want another quote about medication use, or I want another quote about CCM impact from health volunteers about health extension workers. I was like, oh, easy. I went in this document, went to the whatever, here, picked it, emailed it to her. Here you go. And she had 10 to choose from.
So what are you're putting the queries in each of these documents to answer the questions, or what are you doing?
So this is just, this document was from my query. Yep. So it's all the quotes, all the codes from that particular query. So 26 documents are in my query here. This one produced 20 quotations for that particular search, or that particular.
Say you needed 3 queries from 3 stakeholders, you would put that in one document because that answered the one question you were looking
at. Yep, and I can query that way too. No problem. No problem.
Can you export it directly from Atlas to Word, or do you have to copy and paste it into a Word document?
It opens as a text file, and then I just save it as a Word. Okay, so oh, we already did that. That's so fun though. I don't know what's going on with all my steps here. So I've extracted all of these. I've answered my research questions by then. And Atlas doesn't do everything for us. So we have brains, so we're the ones who have to then take those outputs and answer the research questions ourselves. Yeah? We can't ask Atlas, okay, blah, blah, blah. Right? It won't give us that output. Just like quantitative data, though, we have to interpret the numbers. So I've interpreted my outputs. I've compared themes, I've contrasted themes, and now I built different data matrices, not using Atlas, but I just wanted to show you an example of some of the things that I was able to produce from that type of output. And if I can find it, final report. Okay, so here's a very simple one. Sorry. So here's a very simple type of matrix, and here I was looking at how community health volunteers, I think it was how they thought that the program impacted upon child health, and how they thought it impacted upon behavior change, and then if there were any other effects that the community health volunteers thought. And then I provided a salient quote here to help illustrate those data. That's a very simple one stakeholder group, but I'm stratifying by 3 different types of information that I want. Let me show you something more. And then of course when you present your data, you have many quotes that Atlas will produce once you code it too, which are part of presenting qualitative data. This is still all the answer to question number 1, because if you remember, it was a pretty tough question to answer. I'm trying to find some different examples for you. So here's another one. So this was question number 4.4, I guess. What are the stakeholders' attitudes towards the role change of the CHV to the health extension worker? So this, you can see I actually quantified here. Now, maybe a true qualitative researcher and some of my colleagues in the back would scold me for counting the number of quotes and then making a judgment based on that. But actually the donor, or the woman I was working with from the organization, she said, well, Steve, how many people said this and how many people said this? So luckily through Atlas, I'm able to do a query and I'm able to see the frequency of times that I coded something a certain way, just like I can do in a word search. So very cool. So to answer this question, I actually tallied the number of positive quotes about this role change from each stakeholder group, which was very easy to do. And then I was able to come up with some exemplar quotes to illustrate what I thought represented the overall tone of all of those data. And then I added a couple of categories here that were more grounded in nature, that emerged from the data. For example, this category about importance of collaboration and importance of continued care. And then to answer her research question, I used the quantitative tally and the qualitative textual data that I produced to come up with the truth, some answers from a positivist perspective. But she wanted to see this. She said, Steve, we want to know, is it positive or negative from the feeling of the community health volunteer? And I gave her the best analysis that I could using ATLAS.
Question about the detailed tagging. You hadn't actually tagged if they were positive or negative. You just included them all, and then later you went back to tally. Is that right?
I don't remember whether I did an initial negative or positive tag, but I certainly could have. If I tagged all these 10 as positive, plus being the perception of the role change positive, perception of the role change positive, then I can go back and search, and now I have 10 positive quotes from, and I have 10 negative or something. So you could do that. Yeah.
Does this report some of the
No, I don't think you're privy to it, because I produced it just for an organization consultants, just for consultancy. I don't think it's public domain.
Well, I mean, the only time we can look at it is on the screen right now.
Yes. But you can come see me or something and look at them too.
Well, I think it's just helpful the way that you have it structured, and if there is a document where I'm not speaking for everybody, but if I could reference it to be like, okay, this is how this is one example of what a table looks like, and where we can.
Yeah, I wouldn't reference me, and I really just created these based on my own imagination, based on how I've read previous qualitative papers, and based on my own interpretation of the data and how I thought best would represent answering the question in a simplified manner. And so this was really just me. I don't know if it's correct or if it's. That's why I said I don't know if this is the most appropriate recommended way to do things, but I find this to be a very useful way. At least the stepwise approach when I analyze qualitative data and present it.
Right, but I mean, so for example, with me, we're given a lot of papers, and we kind of have to imagine how this looks like with ourselves, and it's just helpful just to see how other people have done it, and maybe it's you can recommend like reports or something that at least me personally could look at just to be like, oh, okay, maybe I could change it and do something different.
Yeah. So I would say look at feel free to email me and say, Steve, hey, do you have any examples of different types of tables to present data? I know Bernard's book. Is that in this class still? QRTM? Bernard? Yes. Qualitative Research Methods in Anthropology, I think. That has good different tables, different ways to analyze. I don't know if Sharmaz's book still does have different ways to present data. If you Google qualitative research, you'll come up with a lot of peer-reviewed stuff, and that has different ways of presentation too. And then using a piecemeal approach, you can come up with your own way to represent. So this is just another way, looking at two different stakeholders by illness. And this was the summary of what mothers were doing to treat malaria. And this was the end. And this was it's up. Yeah, and then this is a thematic quote that I thought represented well how mothers were treating all three illnesses. Anyway, you have to come up with your own ways to present data. Atlas won't do this for you. It will show relationships among things. It will show it will show relationships, but it won't give you these different tables and things. So do your best with that. I'm not sure what else to say other than what I already talked about. Okay, great. So, where were we? So those are the matrices, and that was the project that I completed. And if you notice, I collected the data in just a couple of weeks. I literally did that analysis and wrote that report in a week. Probably 4 days. Now those were long 4 days. But Atlas made it possible to have that quality of work in that short amount of time for only $99. So, do you want to try it? Yes! Okay, before we try it though, do you have any questions for me about that project or Atlas in general, at large? Yeah.
Do you wait until after you develop your final code to start coding in Atlas, or do you do it as you're doing your initial coding, kind of pick out from the themes?
That's a good question. So Carly's asking when do I start my analysis, right?
I'm asking when you start coding in Atlas. Like right now, we're all trying to develop our code books. We're doing our initial coding and starting to have actual code as opposed to coding. And some of us are debating whether or not we should do that by hand, or if we should just start in Atlas, or wait until we actually start to have our finalized code book to start coding.
No, I would say using Atlas, you're going to look at the data more closely also, and you'll probably add some codes, and you might modify some codes as you're using it. So I would say there's never really a final one until you've gone through the whole read through and software process. When to start using Atlas? Is that your question? You can start any time, really. I like to have a good grasp of the data at least before I really get into it, because I don't like, Atlas isn't super great with accepting changes that you make. It is, but it's just a little bit tricky. So I like to make as few mistakes as I can when I'm using the software. So for example, this project, I did a lot of the preliminary analysis by reading after that first week, and then I inputted it on the second week, only about 60% of my data set. Started coding. My code book was getting bigger, it was changing. And then I had the rest of my documents translated. I inputted them into that hermeneutic unit. And then I was able to finalize the last bit. And then I was able to go back to the beginning ones, because now I was kind of coding a little bit differently than I was 2 weeks prior. And then I was able to go back and make some modifications or add some codes or add some memos too. So if that helps, yeah. Any other questions in general at large?
I'm just curious if you could
Sorry.
They only have 25 minutes left.
Okay.
So maybe get to those really fast.
Okay. One more question. No?
Questions about the process. Maybe students around in 2 minutes afterwards.
Okay, so let's get to the hands-on. So who has Atlas right now? Where are our Atlas hubs? Okay, kind of like interesting. Who's using Atlas on a Mac, on a parallel desktop? Okay, I used to do that, so I can maybe help also with that. But now I use my PC. But anyway, make sure you're around someone. Let's see if we can work on some hands-on things. So. Okay, are we ready? Yes. Yes, we're ready. Yes? Hello. Okay, let's get started together as a group. I have so much control over this class. So I will begin. To start a hermeneutic unit is the first step. Steve Harvey already talked about this, but what's the first thing we need to do to create a hermeneutic unit? We need to put data into it, yes. So we need to, what are the data called within Atlas? Primary documents, right? So let's assign some primary documents. And I always thought the hardest part was getting started with Atlas. It's just because the language is just so odd. Okay, so we need to assign primary documents, and sometimes it's hard to search for those documents. This got me hung up for about 2 months. A couple of years ago, but I'm not that clever, so you'll probably get it today. Okay, so we have to go to documents first. I've got a blank hermeneutic unit up right now. Let's go to documents, and I'm assuming that you guys have your documents in a folder somewhere, right? So that's what we're searching for. So let's assign some primary documents to this. I'll go to the Ethiopia project just to show you an example. So I've got my data somewhere. Let's look. Final versions, that looks good. Steve Kodish edits, that looks good. I've got FGD data and I've got IDI data here. Now I'm going through these, but I don't see anything happening. And this is what got me for 2 months. And then I realized that it's just the file type at the bottom. So you need to look for the certain type of file. So if you're searching and you can't find any of your files, you're not looking for hermeneutic units, you're looking for actually that Word document. So let's see here. I think this is a Word 2010 document that I'm searching for. Let's see if this helps. Voila! Yes. So here are all of my data. Now, I will click on one of my primary documents, IDI, Community Health Volunteer, Shirkale, something on that date.
Can you do multiple at a time?
I don't know that answer. You can probably do multiple at a time. I upload them one by one because I've only until now worked on relatively small data sets. If anyone knows how to do it all at once? No? Okay, but so I don't know. So right now, your task, I will give you a task. I want you to upload or load 4 primary documents. 4, go. TAs, maybe you can help facilitate.
But we'll just try this matter.
Oh.
Where do you tell if they go away from it?
It's in right here.
Oh.
Now double click one of them.
But it makes it like,
Oh, beautiful.
My computer died. Lost our power source.
I couldn't open Atlas about 30 minutes ago. I was really nervous, so I understand.
But I think we got it. And you're doing a good job. So.
Okay, well.
It's nice to build the muscle memory.
Yeah. Okay. How are we doing, guys? Yeah? So you got the primary docs up?
Well, no, that's the problem, because I don't have any of my files on the PC side. So I'm getting it through Google Docs and making it RTF.
working in a group. There's a question.
Yeah, that's fine.
Steve told us to use RTFs instead of Word.
Doesn't matter, as far as I'm concerned, but no.
Something that Steve will get to, it's called bundling. And you have to bundle all of your coded documents, and then you can email them directly.
Oh, look, beautiful.
How do we get to, how do we delete a document if I accidentally uploaded the same one twice?
You have to unassign it, not delete it, right?
Yeah.
If you delete it, then it deletes the document.
Oh, sorry.
That's what Steve said. That's what Steve Hart
All right, let's see. Okay, so a lot of these things I do. I don't know exactly how we do it, but I kind of play with it. So we'll go to a primary doc manager. That sounds right. Okay, so now we've got some. Okay, I want to disconnect it. So we're removing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
That's sweet too.
Yeah. Now, what I don't know how to do, because I've had to do this multiple times, I always end up, because it's like P1 is now like never, ever there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, like to me it doesn't matter what the document is numbered as, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine a reason why you would have to have that very... Okay, did we have success? Did you double click one of the documents so that you can view it? Beautiful. Okay. Did you save your hermeneutic unit as something on your desktop? Maybe do that now. File, save as, practice, QDA, Atlas is awesome.com or .hermeneutic unit. Well, that's how I do. You can save it wherever you want. You don't have to save it if you don't want. I was just going through the process of what you might do in real life. Because you have to save the hermeneutic unit. Yeah, it's just like saving a Excel file or something.
So if you sort of select the document as the primary document, but then you don't want to include it anymore, do you just delete it or do you just disconnect?
Yeah.
I found that you can disconnect it, but
yeah, I can. So if they go to yes, so you. Oh, you're not. You're in Word. It's in the Family Manager. Did you get it? Go to Documents.
oh, I think you figured it
Oh,
out.
you get it?
Maybe mentioning it.
Documents.
I just said disconnect.
Disconnect. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going.
How do you delete a document?
Okay. May I have your attention? We have short time left. So we've assigned a couple primary documents, but oh no, I've assigned the same document twice, and I can't mentally deal with having the same document in there twice because I'm so type A. So how do I get rid of one of them? So how to get rid of one of them? If I go up here to Documents, and I go to my primary document manager, this is to delete. Then it shows me what documents are in my primary document. I've got 3 in this practice one. So I have it open. But now I could disconnect it. And that gets rid of that. Now, how...
Edit. Sorry, I missed that.
Okay.
Just hit that red edit. You went documents.
There you go. You could also hit red X. There's a lot of repetition in Atlas, a lot of buttons that do the same thing. Yep, so the red X is good too. I'm always hesitant to hit a red X button. Okay, so now it's gone. You'll notice that I have P2 and P3 there. P1 is no longer available. Quite honestly, I don't know how to renumber things. I don't know if it's even necessary, and I can't imagine a scenario where it would be necessary. Okay, great. So shall we get to coding? I know Steve Harvey did a little bit of coding. Yes? We've got a couple of primary docs up. Let's go and code. So I like to open my code manager. Now the question often becomes, how do I create a hierarchy of codes?
Steve,
Yeah.
can you show them how to make a code? How to make a code manager?
Yes. So how do I add codes? How do I create codes? So if I click on codes, my code manager comes up. So yours should come up blank right now. Is it up blank? Yes. Beautiful. Now let's bring up a document. So here's my document. And I like to keep my code manager. I like to keep it to the right here. Just ignore this stuff. I was just playing around earlier with this practice set. So here's my code manager. Now you have a couple ways to name your codes, which I think you've already done or you will do in your code books to keep them in order. Atlas has a function that we can use that will put them in a specific hierarchy for us already. However, it's quite complex. For the scope of this lab and for this class and most of your lives, you'll probably never have to get into that depth with Atlas. So for now, how I like to do it, I like to either use numbers or I like to use ABC order. So you'll notice in this practice set, I've used a couple different ways to organize my codes. I think big into small, right? So this is my big category of illness. And now I have illness, malaria 1. I have malaria 2 was in there before, and malaria 3. Maybe there are 3 different types of malaria or something. I have my next illness, which is pneumonia, and it goes into alphabetical order. So when you create your code book, you'll probably have categories. And so I honestly think that this is the easiest way, just to keep it simple. Those instructions are in your PDF, which you have also. But for now, I'll keep this up. So how do I create one, though? That might be the question. So to create a category, I would go to create free code. No. So free code. What does a free code mean? Any guesses? It's not linked to anything. It's not attached to any text. So code will be Oh, that's the wrong keyboard. QDA. Okay, so QDA is my code. Now, if I wanted to create another new code, there it is, QDA fun. And so on and so forth, right? You can do this. You don't have to do it in alphabetical order. It will alphabetize itself. You don't have to do it in any kind of order if you don't want. You can start blank and just start coding as you go. I like to oftentimes create my code book using what I've written on paper first into Atlas, and then I like to start coding. That's how I do it. Yes?
So the assumption is that you're starting coding from the beginning with Atlas. Obviously, you don't know what your hierarchical codes are going to be when you start.
Yep.
So you're going to code whatever you're coding, and then is there a way of moving things later, or do you just have to rename all your codes? Or?
Yeah. So, oftentimes. So it depends how grounded your analysis is, really. If it's very, very grounded, right, you're not going to really know. You can definitely group codes later. You can delete codes and unlink codes later. Those are some, yes, you can do that. You can do that. And they're all, so you can relink codes to different types of codes, to memos and to quotations. Here we can merge codes. That might be something you're asking too. If you decide that you've hyper-coded too much, how can I get these 5 codes into one code? I can merge my codes, and then also I can undo codes. And we'll talk about that in the next slide because it's a little bit tricky. So you can do all those things, yeah, just like you can with pencil and paper. Yes?
I notice you have like illness and then illness, malaria. Is there a way, or would it be useful to link those, or do you usually just leave illness as a separate code? And then?
So if you noticed before when I said that this certain thing came up 42 times and then there was a 0 next to it, I don't do much linking of codes myself. You can link codes. For me, to answer research questions that I've had to do in public health, I haven't had to link codes. I'm sure there's a great utility in it for different types of projects, and to see how this is related to this, is related to this. And if you haven't taken the tutorial that Atlas provides using Jack the Ripper, he's a detective and he links all these codes because he wants to see how evidence about the knife is related to the intestines of victim number 2 is related to the this and this and this. So yes, you can do it. For now, I don't want to get into that. Okay. So I have my code. Let's say I have my code book of 10, which would be an awesome thing to have, but you probably will never have that. Now I'm reading. So I like to just drag and drop. I think that's the easiest way to code. So I have my codes, and I say, I think this is about illness and malaria 3. I literally just hold down the left mouse button, I drag it over, and illness malaria 3 is now attached to that piece of text. But within that, maybe there's something also about QDA being fun, and I want to link that also with that particular quote. So I like to just click it and drag it over once I have my code book. Now, let's say that I read this, but that's something new. So if it's something new, I can right-click. This is one way to do it. There are many different ways. I can go to coding, and now I have 4 different types of coding. Open coding is just creating a new code. QDA, not fun, perhaps. Code in vivo. Steve Harvey, I think, talked about this. This would give you literally a quote or a word. It's maybe good for local terms or terms that can't be translated, for example. And it would take that whole paragraph, and that's my super long code then. I could code by list. This will give me the list of my already made codes and allow me just to apply it. It's the same exact thing as dragging over and dropping, just in a different format. So I would ignore that code by list function altogether. And then quick coding. I actually like quick coding because it's just a way to apply the previous code that you just applied to the next piece of text. Control Shift Q, I believe, does it. And you can go through pretty quickly once you're coding. Yes, Control Shift Q. So those are your different ways to code. Right now, why don't you just take, before I go, because people get scared about these different things on the left-hand side here. These are very simple. So this is the same thing as creating a free code. Create a new code. This one is the same thing as I would do if I selected text and then coded it. This one would be using my list. This one is the same as Control-Shift-Q. And this one is a text search, which if I search for the word mother, I could, every time the word mother comes up, I can code that. In the World Bank project that I'm working on, we're doing a very content-based analysis of these huge long documents going back to 1985. And so every time the word health infrastructure or the phrase health infrastructure comes up, I need to code that. As you can imagine, that would be a bear having to read these 90-page documents, 492 of them. But with that function, I'm able to search. It hits health infrastructure. I code it. It searches. It hits, et cetera, et cetera.
Does it automatically code it, or does it search and pull it up and you have to?
It asks me. Yeah, it asks me whether I want to do it.
I don't know if I get this, but talk about how you would put them in a hierarchical, like if you wanted a code.
Yeah, so you have to, Atlas isn't super great. It has a function called network, which you're able to do it, but it gets really, really complicated. For our purposes, for this class, just stick with trying to keep it hierarchical like this, with alphabetical order or using numbers. Yeah?
How do you delete a code?
Okay, so we will get to that. Before we get, actually, we'll talk about deleting very quickly. Sorry.
Unlinking a code, maybe.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference between deleting the code and unlinking it.
Okay, so I've just applied QDA fun, and I realized that no QDA is fun. So what do I do here? So I've clicked on it, and now it's highlighted the text to which it applies. If I right-click, and this is in your PDF, I've written it out for you, and if you right-click, then I can unlink it to that piece of text. Yes? Voila, it's gone. Now, you'll notice that the indicator is still there, though. So I probably don't want that there either, and it will allow me now to delete that small section. If I go and delete it, then it gets rid of that, but then it keeps the code on there. It's a little bit funky. Also, sometimes if you delete the something else happens if you delete the code. If you delete the code, this isn't a great example. Let me see.
If you're in the code book, sorry, it's just because we only have 4 minutes left. But if you're in the code book and you click delete, it will delete that code from all of your scripts.
Yeah. So if I'm in here.
Unlink instead of delete.
So if you're in here, you don't want to delete one of these because it will get rid of it everywhere. It will warn you, at least in the newest version, that might happen. I don't know about the previous versions. But I like to use my mouse. I like to right-click, unlink, and then delete. So I've given you these different ways in the PDF file to do these things. I've given you different explanations for the coding. I'm just trying to hurry up because I know we're short on time. I've showed you how to uncode things in the PDF, so you can practice if you'd like to do it. I don't think we have time to talk about how to memo, but I really like memoing, and I think it's quite helpful. I did hear someone talk about how to link it to something else. And I've showed you how to, and I've showed at least how to, in this slide, how to attach it to a piece of text. And I've broken it down into 2 parts. So if you have a great idea in relation to a specific piece of text, then you'll highlight the text first, and then you'll create the memo, and it'll be attached to that. Sometimes you just have a great idea, or a memo idea, but you don't want it attached to anything in particular, and you can just create a free memo, and so it's there for you to read later. And
if you want to attach it or link it to more than just one section in one document, how do you do that?
okay, so let's go to, this is my big file with the Ethiopia project. So now I've got my memo manager open, and I've got this link here. I've got these 2 quotes. Now, I right-clicked the memo in the memo manager. What do I want to link it to? Oh, this is a good memo because it actually refers to all mothers' opinions about malaria, for example. So I could link it to a code. I could link it to all codes about CHV care, for example. Okay. And now in text, that little notepad icon has been made. And when you go back and search later, you can find all the memos or all those codes with that memo attached.
But if you don't want to do it by code, just have like a few sections in this document and a section in this document. You can't do that.
Yeah, well, just to create a memo. So if I have this little paragraph here, do you mean? Sure, I can just. I'm not sure your question.
So a memo would be connected to that one thing that you just highlighted.
Right.
You just have that, and then you wanted to highlight another little section, and then maybe a little section, another document. But it's not done by, only this code.
So you could link it by quotations. So if you made it a quotation, which is it's an option here. If you made it a quotation, then you could link it to this. For example, if that were a quotation also. You guys are thinking very complex right now that I think is beyond what you need to do for this class, actually. But you can do that. You can do that. So we have, okay, so I showed you very quickly how to create a code. But let me just go through my slides so I can explain them to you. And you can link them then to quotes, to codes, or to other pieces of text. The creating the families section, it's very helpful. You guys probably have different types of people in your projects. I've given you an easy 9-step process to doing that. It's 9 steps, but it's really only 4 steps. I just literally went step by step by step. You should be able to figure it out based on that PDF or that slide. Next, in my project, I showed you how I got those queries, or I did those queries. And I think that's a very functional tool of Atlas. Here, I've given you steps in order to do that, which I think will be very helpful for your analysis. And then also, I've given you more complex steps to code query by family, which is helpful also. And finally, I know that some of you will have to share with each other. You have to share sequentially. That means that she cannot be coding and she cannot be coding the same primary document, the same hermeneutic unit at the same time, and then decide they want to flip-flop. A, then B, then C, unfortunately. So I've given you the tools how to do this. I've heard people run into trouble doing so, but I have not done it. I've only had to do it one time. I didn't run into any troubles. I can show you very quickly how I might do it with this data set. So here's my data set. Under Tools, I have Copy Bundle. Here I want to create a bundle or install a bundle. Here I will create my, so this is a good thing, which I actually put in the slide. You have to save it so it's most up to date first. So now it's up to date. Now I want to create my bundle. And if you look here, documents which cannot be bundled, they can all be bundled. Excellent. Bundle documents, these 2 documents. I want to attach it to my desktop. And my copy bundle is finished. It's saved. And let's say it's right here, Atlas Practice QDA.acb. It's a Photoshop, Adobe, something.
What's a bundle?
So the bundle is it's your hermeneutic unit bundled together. All the primary docs bundled together. So now I've finished my coding, and I want to send them to Melissa. So now do you see this file at the bottom? I will literally just email that file to her. Once she has the file, she can only open this file not by double-clicking, but by opening Atlas, going back to my tools, copying my bundle, and installing this bundle. And then you will browse, you will find it, and it will upload the new coded stuff from me, or Melissa will be able to open up the new coded stuff from me. And then she will have to rebundle again to send it to her 3rd group member. Questions?
Do you make changes on what you've done, or you can only add like a new
She can make changes, she can add, she can do whatever. Yes?
Can you merge too?
What do you mean?
Like, so two people independently do the same document, but they're not bundled, and then can you bring them together and merge them?
Oh, I don't know how to do that. I don't think so.
I don't think you can.
Yeah.
But you could merge hermeneutic units. So if you have
Into
one to add to one larger bundle. And this whole process, like, thanks Steve, and he's really, I think, laid it out very, very nicely. There's also, Atlas makes its own user manual. It's free, it's only electronic, and it's daunting at like 400 pages, but it really answers almost every question you can think of. So you can always use that as a resource for more questions, because obviously we haven't been able to get to everything today.
Yeah. So I guess in closing, as usual, I tend to talk too much when I'm teaching and not allowing enough hands-on stuff, which I apologize for. But my primary goal of this was to actually show you the utility of Atlas, to show you that it can be very, very helpful when you do programmatic qualitative research, which I think you are all going to have to do at some point if you plan to do qualitative research in public health. And to give you some of the basic functions that I use to answer research questions. And I think that I've at least laid them out. In order for further practice, please don't hesitate to email me or stop by my office in E5040. I'm often there, and I'm happy to help with any additional questions. But I know it's easy to say, screw Atlas, because I just want to do this by hand because fourth term's so crazy busy. But I really think it's a good, useful tool. Okay, that's all.